I'm exhausted sending these tweets.
Hello, everybody. How are you doing today? This is another great Monday of another great H2H chat. Very excited to be here with Jay Baer. First and foremost, before I make the official introduction, as if you do not know him, but before I get to that, Suzie, hello to my co-host. How are you doing today?
Howdy. I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. I'm on your side of the country. I'm in Boston right now, and you are in New York. So,
New
hello,
York,
East Coast time.
right? Is it rainy there?
It is very rainy, so I will
Yeah.
not get to see the outside, unfortunately.
Oh, bummer.
And I want to also introduce our guest today. Our guest is Jay Baer. He is a New York Times bestselling author, global keynote speaker, digital media entrepreneur, and president of Convince and Convert, a strategy consulting firm. Hello, Jay. How are you doing?
Hey guys, how you doing? Thanks very much for having me. Fired up to do some H2H. Share it.
Woo! And let me warn you, because sometimes I forget to warn people when they use the word human, this happens.
That
I just
tends
wanted
to
to warn
freak
you in
out.
case you all of a
Yeah.
sudden feel like maybe people are clapping for what I'm saying.
All right.
Um,
What's the most time somebody has actually worked that into one of these conversations, in a relevant way?
okay, so I'd have to go with Suzie. Back me on this, or correct me if I'm wrong. I want to say like 5, maybe 6 at the most.
All right.
I feel like when we had Joel Comm on,
Yeah.
he's the guy to beat, which gives
That
you a
guy's
sense.
full of shit. I'm gonna do
Well,
7, and then Brian, you're buying me cocktails next time I see you. Okay, 7 is my over under.
I'm gonna start writing this down, or I'm gonna have a little checklist there going
Right.
on.
People on Twitter, you count them off. When I
Yes.
say it. And I'm not just doing it. It'll be in context. I'm a professional, ladies and gentlemen.
How about a
Sweet.
drink? It's too early in the day, I guess, for drinks. We have some UK people, so if you're in the UK, new drinking game: human. Anything with human, drink.
All right, so let's get started. First and foremost, anyone who is new to this, you can use the hashtag H2H chat in your Twitter, in your tweets, and in your Twitter, and that will allow us to interact with you during the course of the next hour. But even more importantly, the last half of this are questions from you for Jay. So please make sure that you show up with some questions alongside. Suzie is going to be capturing those questions, and so you can definitely feel free to throw a question out at any time, and we will ask it. And let's get started. Jay, I wanted to talk with you about your new book. The title of this is Sharing, is part of the Shareology series, and the title of this is Hugging Your Haters After Your New Book. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your new book?
So the new book, which I'm writing right now, actually spent all weekend writing the book, locked away here in my office, is called Hug Your Haters: How to Embrace Complaint and Keep Your Customers. We spend so much time thinking about how to use digital marketing, social media, content marketing, skywriting, direct mail. We spend all this time, energy, and money on trying to create net new customers. Yet, it's so much easier to keep the customers that you have. But the most important way to do that is to actually hug them when they actually have a problem. There's some amazing research that we uncovered in the book that the overwhelming majority of people who have a problem with your business never say anything. They just go away, right? They just stop giving you money. And the people who complain, who actually take the time to leave you a mean tweet or a bad Yelp review or a phone call or an email, those are the people who are actually massively, massively important to your business, because they're using their time, their own time, to tell you what is wrong. And instead of spending our energy running those people down and saying that they're just haters and we should ignore them, we should be spending a disproportionate amount of our time and effort hugging those people and learning from them.
I love it. Let's dive in a little bit into the word hug. I know it's a universal term, but when you say hug, especially online, what kind of examples can you use in
Yeah.
how to hug your hater?
Sure, I'll tell you the exact recipe for the book. So here's the formula, and the whole book is about how you actually do this. So when I say hug your haters, what I mean, Brian, is that you should answer every complaint in every channel every time. Every complaint, every channel, every time. And almost no business does that. What businesses do instead is they answer some complaints in some channels some of the time. Maybe they don't answer things in Facebook, or they only answer complaints from people with a high clout score, or they only answer complaints 8 to 5. There's all these different sort of filters and lenses we put on it to fit our own purposes. But if we just said, hey, what is the best way to do customer service for humans instead of what is the best way to do customer service for the company, that's the philosophy that you should be adopting.
Wow, that's so when you're talking
and
about.
that was number one, and there was no sound effect. This show is ridiculous.
Say, seriously.
That was thank you, Susie. At
Brian,
least Susie's
don't
paying
make
attention.
Me take control of the sound effects. This is you. We got the division of labor. I do Twitter. You do sound effects.
I'm seeing the delineation. Thank you, guys. I'm going to hug you guys. So great first use of that word. What I wanted to kind of dig into, though, is when you answer every single one. I mean, when you are, let's say you're Amazon, is it possible to answer every single one?
Of course it is. Here's what it requires, and in this order: caring about your customers, making it a company imperative to answer every complaint, and putting the right level of resources against it. That's it, right? Want to do it and go do it. There's tons of examples in the book. Here's one from Discover Card. Discover Card is one of the best brands in the whole world in customer service. They hang their hat on it. At one point, their average response time in customer service was over an hour. And they said, you know what? We want to be the best in the world. So they just added a bunch of people and a bunch of resources and spent a bunch of money. And now their average response time in customer service on social is under 15 minutes. They just did it because it was the right thing to do, and they, of course, track ROI against that and see much higher customer satisfaction rates and all the benefits there. But, of course, you can do it. Now, Amazon's an interesting point, though, Brian, because, and actually I talk about Amazon a little bit in the book, that Amazon has a little different philosophy, and it's not a bad idea. What they believe is if somebody calls us, then we have fundamentally failed as providers of information. Amazon looks at a telephone call as a failure, an institutional failure. So there's a part of the book towards the end where I talk about the future of customer service and the future of haters. And one of the lines of inquiry there is, hey, if you keep getting the same question over and over, maybe instead of adding customer service reps, you should just answer the question in a way that causes that question to no longer have to be asked, right? And this is a bit of an oversimplification, but the second time you get the same question, that should raise some sort of alarm in your organization that says, wait a second, something in our world is not as clear as it should be.
Mm. Yeah, and it was so hard to do in 140 characters, don't you think?
Yeah, it is, and it's we're seeing so much more customer service coming from social. Now, let me put a caveat there. The research that we did for the book, and I should have started with this, and this is an important point. Some people who are watching the show know Tom Webster from Edison Research. Tom's a fantastic guy and author in his own right. Edison is one of the foremost research organizations in this country. My company, and myself partnered with Edison to do a huge comprehensive research project for the book. It's proprietary research about who hates, how they hate, why they hate, where they hate. So if you want to know what happens if somebody complains on Facebook about a telco and they are a 26-year-old Latino woman in Texas, I can tell you exactly what that means and what their expectations are. It is the largest study ever done on hating, both online and offline. What we found in that research is that today, 62% of all complaints happen offline first. And in some businesses it's much higher than that. In other businesses it may be somewhat lower. But everybody I talked to for the book, and I did something like 70 interviews for this book, everybody I talk to says that as time passes, more and more of their complaints are coming in social media and in online because, look, you're holding a phone, right? It's way easier for me to send you a tweet or a Facebook or even a Yelp review than it is to craft an email or call you and wait on hold. And so we're seeing those numbers balance out. And when you talk about it being hard in 140 characters, it absolutely is. But here's the thing, Bryan. As humans, we don't necessarily expect that. We don't necessarily expect that our problem's going to be solved in a tweet, but we do expect that we're going to be heard in a tweet, right? And when I say hug your haters, that doesn't mean that haters are right. It does mean that haters deserve to be heard.
Well, I love that. Now, where does a hater turn into too much? When does a hater turn into a troll?
Yeah, super timely. I just wrote that chapter yesterday. There's two types of haters that we identified in the research. There are offstage haters, and we call them offstage haters because they complain via telephone and email. So offstage, in private, one-to-one. And of course, at one point in our world, not that long ago really, that was the only way. There only were offstage haters, right? There were no public venues for complaint. Now, of course, with the rise of the internet and the web and social media, review sites, etc., you're seeing this pendulum shift over to the other side, which we call on-stage haters. And those are people who complain in public venues, Facebook, Twitter, review sites, discussion boards, forums, those kind of things. So on-stage haters, off-stage haters. But there is, in fact, a third type you just alluded to, Bryan, which is sort of the crazies, right? People who are just unhinged, and they exist both off-stage and on-stage. And we interviewed some clinical psychiatrists for the book and also interviewed some people who were sort of in that unhinged kind of troll camp. And there's two kind of subgroups there. One are people who are just super, super, super unhappy, and actually typically, according to the psychiatrists that we talked to, they're unhappy not so much with the company, they're actually unhappy with who they are as a human. And so what it is it's projection, for those of you who took psychiatry. So they're taking something that bothers them here, right, and they're throwing it out on a company, which is why a lot of times that kind of troll behavior is disproportionate to the problem, right? It's like, hey, there's a fly in my soup, and now I'm going to go like batshit crazy, right? It's out of proportion to the problem, but that's because it's in here, right? It's in themselves. And then you have sort of your typical trolls, which are just, trolling people because they think it's funny, they think it's entertaining and hilarious. But I believe, and there's some great examples in the book, that even those people, even the wacko, crazy nut jobs, should still always be answered, that everybody should be heard regardless of circumstance.
So what now are you going to be talking about, and or can you talk about the different types of responses that you would give? Is there a classification or a categorization of how to, is it almost too many categories, or are there buckets that you can use to respond?
Yeah. So we have two workbooks that we're putting together. Well, not really work, but two playbooks, I should say, frameworks for the book. One is how to handle offstage haters, and one is how to handle onstage haters, and the sort of tips and advice for optimally handling complaints in each channel. There are some commonalities across the board, which are, number one, everybody should be heard, so you should answer every complaint in every channel every time. But you should never, ever, ever, ever reply 3 times online. It's the rule of 3. So if somebody complains and you answer them, and then they say something else and you answer them, the 3rd time you're done, right? You take it offline, right? There is no benefit to the customer, and most definitely no benefit to you and your business getting into a tit-for-tat in a public venue, which is why in many cases you see things in social, which is not wholly satisfying but is very smart. Hey, please DM me and we'll take it offline.
Just real quick, because Google is always a fun technology that has little moments of Fockerness. That's F-O-C-K, by the way. If you wouldn't mind, Jay, going to the top and adjusting your bandwidth down just a little bit. I want to see if we can get some people back on the video. They're having just a little bit of a problem, so I want to make sure that we get everybody linked again. So if you go to the top, there's a little adjust bandwidth button. If you click right on your video, so click on the video itself, and then right at the top you'll see a little, as you roll your mouse over, it says adjust bandwidth, and then you can adjust it down. Adjust it down one. And Suzie, if you could do the same thing.
Yep. Let's see here. Maya thinks that's the issue.
And let's see if everyone can start seeing this again that way.
Wait, I'm not seeing that actually. Can you repeat that once more?
Click on the video, on your video, and then you'll see a little bar come up. And as you roll over, one of them is adjust bandwidth usage.
Okay.
And you want to turn that down. Okay, so I think that will do the trick. All right, so that is one of the toughest things. I love that rule of thirds. I actually share the rule of thirds in how I share, and actually that's funny because I cover that in sharing in Shareology, but I never thought about that in terms of how to respond to people, how to respond to no more than 3. You know, I think you and I had a little bit of a back and forth, or at least you saw my post, I think, on Hyatt when I was in New York 4 weeks ago, and it was probably one of the more difficult things because I, like yourself, travel a lot, and when I get into a situation, I try not to go to Twitter because I know that it's a hard place to, you know, be able to easily say, I don't agree. Especially as kind of an influencer, it's hard, I guess. And my point and my question out of this is, I went to Twitter. I did say something because I was feeling not heard. It took many times of not feeling heard, and finally I went to Twitter, and they did something about it. Now my question to you is, they did help me out, and they helped me out in a massive way. They gave me a penthouse suite, and they did all this really cool things. But I have kind of a larger following on social. What do you think about that? I mean, the difference between them helping someone out who has 120,000 followers to somebody who has 100 followers. Should, again, everyone be treated, like you say, on every single step of the way equally? Should everyone get the penthouse?
Yeah. A couple things. So did you call them first or email them, or what was your initial contact point with them? I don't remember the beginning of that story.
Yeah, no, good question. So I had a room with them for about 4 weeks reserved, and I got there late at night, and they had handed my room away. Yeah. So then I went to 2 more hotels, couldn't find a room, and that's when I started to get a little anxious.
So in your case, and this is very true of people like us, right, who are sort of social media natives, if you will, we tend to, and increasing numbers of people tend to go to social media first, as I mentioned a moment ago. However, when you look at the population at large, what typically happens is that people don't go to social media first. They go to social media last, after they've already done some sort of offstage hater behavior. So they've called and or they've emailed, and they've been unhappy with that response, either the response time, waited on hold too long, whatever, and then they're like, you know what, I don't like your phone, I don't like your email, now I'm going to social, and that's where it becomes not necessarily wanting an answer, but wanting an audience. So that dynamic is very common, happens all the time. We've got it fully documented and researched in the book. Now, the real thrust of your question, though, is how do you treat people in a world where we know that some people have disproportionate audience influence, etc. I believe, and the thesis of the book, is that the first touch, right, the first line of defense is to treat everybody the same. And you know, I forget which interview subject told me this, and so I've got it captured in the outline, but I haven't written the chapter yet, said something like, you know what, the easiest way to figure out whether you're dealing with influencers well is to treat everybody the same. Then by definition, you were treating influencers well, which is very smart, right? You don't have to think about who's influential if you treat everybody the same. Now, at first touch, in terms of, look, everybody's going to get an answer, in every channel every time, I believe that should be universal. Doesn't matter if you've got 1 million Twitter followers or 0, it should be the same. Now, in terms of your remediation, right, what happens to make that person happy? That's where you start to see a lot of circumstances unfold that may be driven not necessarily by your influence, but think about it in a company that has an e-commerce database. What's your lifetime value, right? How many pairs of shoes have you bought from this company in the past, etc. So while the sort of human side of this equation makes you think, geez, it sure would be nice if we lived in a world where everybody was treated the same all the time, regardless of influence or circumstance. I mean, the reality is it's probably smart business to have some tiers of remediation based on different scenarios that you can uncover.
I like it. Yeah, I do agree with you. I wonder how as people we will adhere to that. When you look at somebody's following, you look at somebody's, if it was a rock star, would we treat them the same? So I see what you're saying, but I wonder if like Paula Abdul walked in, she's gonna get the penthouse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yes.
It's certainly a hard, as we work as anybody works in customer service, to delineate the difference between a customer and a rock star. That'll be hard. But
yeah, and it really comes back to availability of data, right? Some businesses, either because of their industry or just because they've been thinking about this for a while, have the ability to pull influencer data or lifetime value data or any sort of relevant signal that tells you this is perhaps a more important customer. Some businesses just have that advantage. Others don't, either because they're too small, they're manifestly offline, or they just don't care, or there's a lot of reasons why you wouldn't have access to that data. So it's an interesting place that we're at, because back in the day, you said it, right? It's somebody walks into your hardware store, you recognize Paul because Paul's always in the hardware store. He's a regular, quote unquote, right? It's like going to the sports bar you always go to, and every once in a while the bartender comps you a beer. It's the same premise, but now we've got all this data and databases and big data that we can theoretically use to kind of have that same experience in an online environment. But some companies are much more set up to do that than others.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit and weave it into the future of customer service, the future of hugging your haters. Where do you see it going? What can we evolve to? I mean, what's ahead of us?
There's a few different pieces that I see. Some of it's happening now, and in no particular order, sort of the order that I remember it. One is dedicated support apps, right? So there's a number of interesting mobile apps now. One's called Peopleocity, which is owned by George Klein, who's a guy in Indianapolis that I know. And their idea is that you install the Peopleocity app, and then when you are at a business, a restaurant, a barber, the kind of things that you would typically use Yelp for, if you have a negative experience, instead of going online or to Yelp or calling them or whatever to express your displeasure, you just use this app, press a button, and it automatically goes to the general manager or the manager, whomever is sort of a decision maker in that business. And the idea is that they can solve it while you're still there, or it sort of takes what ordinarily would be an on-stage complaint and keeps it off-stage, which I think is an interesting concept, and I suspect that somebody will crack that code. It may or may not be Peopleocity, but somebody will crack that code and have what would be sort of Foursquare with greater usage, of course, but Foursquare for complaining is probably the best way to describe that. I think that's going to happen. Maybe it'll be Facebook. I don't know. We talked about it earlier, this notion of why don't we just try and get rid of complaints by solving the root cause, and that's certainly something that Amazon is at the forefront of examining complaints and examining even questions and saying, well, how can we just make sure that that doesn't ever get asked? That's certainly a big one. And the other one, and I'll let you jump in here, that I'm really interested in, and it's been around for a while, but now it's really starting to pick up speed, are sort of these peer communities, right? Whether it's Get Satisfaction or Vision Critical or things like that, where it's like, look, why don't we let the customers help one another? which creates a tremendous impact on people, right? Not only does it make customer service in and of itself more human, but it also makes the customers happy. People love doing that, right? They're into it, and companies that have been really good about these kind of insight communities, customer service communities, have seen their customer service costs drop significantly because their customers are doing first line support. I think it's really fascinating.
I'm only laughing because as you're talking about customer support, my housekeeping lady just walked in and asked if I needed anything. So that's customer support just happened right now. So I was listening, but customer service actually takes preference. So how do you think that customer service in a business to business world can happen better? Because we're, a lot of what you're talking about is B2C. Although I know it's really all HTH, but we'll talk about that another time. In the B2B world, you're working with let's use Cisco as an example, because
Sure.
Cisco is a channel marketing partner-oriented company. They sell everything through their partners. Yet when something fails, the failure is immediately with the brand. And so where does the customer service happen? Does it happen with Cisco, or does it happen with the partner that sold you the product?
Well, it's the same thing with Best Buy, right? I mean, Best Buy doesn't make anything; they just retail it. If you've got a problem with your DVD player and you bought it from Best Buy, you're going to Best Buy for help, even though they didn't make it. Same circumstance. There is a tremendous amount of opportunity, especially for discussion boards, forums, and community-based support in B2B. I talk a lot in the book about Spiceworks and G2 Crowd and places like that where B2B technology organizations are leaving reviews, are interacting, or asking questions. Spiceworks in particular is fantastic because they really put a ton of emphasis on having individuals, i.e. people from Cisco, and there's a number of Cisco participants there, being an active part of the community. So when somebody leaves a review or has a question or has a problem, those individuals, some of them are spending almost their whole day on Spiceworks, jump in there, answer the question, so it doesn't become a complaint. It doesn't become a call to a call center. It doesn't become an angry email. It becomes a forum question that they can answer that not only makes that person happy, but then everybody else participating in that community benefits from that knowledge transfer as well.
Great. So now let's jump into the influencer side, because influencer marketing, as I know you know, is a really critical piece to every brand's marketing aspect. But how are you seeing influencer marketing perhaps woven into hugging your haters?
Not as much on the straight influencer side, but certainly on the advocate side. One of my favorite companies in that context is Needle. Do you know those guys? So
I know.
the way Needle works is they take actual customers, customer advocates, and they train them as live chat reps. So you're on a website and it says, it seems that you've got a question about this. Would you like to talk to an actual customer to get your question solved? Well, sure, that seems like a good idea, yes. And now you're in a live chat with an actual customer, right? So instead of talking to a call center or a customer service person, you're talking to somebody who is a customer and is a fan just like you. And it really improves customer satisfaction rates. And because these people sort of have that trust and that knowledge, they're able to drive a lot of commerce. The best example is for Royal Caribbean cruise lines. So they have a Needle community set up. Needle pulled some of their cruise fans, people who go on cruises all the time. I'm sure everybody knows somebody like that who's just like a cruise junkie, right? Who's doing like 8 cruises a year, that kind of person. So they took this one lady, and her name is Barry. And Barry is like the leader of the pack in the Needle live chat support community. So she has been on every Royal Caribbean cruise, like all over the world, and knows like by memory how far the bed is from the desk in every class of cabin on every ship. I mean, she's like a super freak. She, by herself, generated $12 million in cruise bookings last year.
Wow.
and she gets a little piece of that transaction. She's on a little bit of an affiliate program. So they're taking actual customers, making them the best and most trusted customer service agents, and giving them a little piece of any revenue that they push.
That's
Genius.
phenomenal. Very, very. The power of a personal brand right there.
Right? And I don't know of any B2B companies that are doing that, but man, I keep thinking about why doesn't B2B do that? It's like, it's a natural.
Right. You know, were you able to see the news piece that came out? I think it was about a week ago. KLM's 150 social media customer service agents generated $25 million in annual revenue.
Yeah. In fact, I interviewed Carlin from KLM for Social Pros, for the Social Pros podcast recently, and she's their social media customer service manager, and KLM are one of the real stars of the Hug Your Haters book. They answer customer service complaints, questions 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in 14 different languages. So if you tweet them in Turkish, they will tweet you back in Turkish within 10 minutes, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so you talked at the very outset about, wow, doesn't it require a lot of resources to hug your haters? Yeah, it does. Guess how many people they have on just their customer service team in social? 150 people just doing social media customer service.
Wow.
But like you said, they're generating all kinds of real revenue, actual revenue, not just customer satisfaction, but real revenue. I mean, and that's the thing, Brian. Like, a customer you keep is worth so much more than a customer you get. But we don't think about that. We never do the math on that. We're like, geez, it takes so much time to hire more customer service people. Yeah, but it also takes a lot of money to go get net new customers all the time.
Right. Yeah, I think that part of the challenge is for any company to see the vision of what you just said, and figure out how they're going to put 150 social media people and organize, architect, drive, trust, and build a 150 people to go do that. I mean, that's talk about sorry, I'm going to do it myself, but talk about a human-driven marketing approach.
Yep. Well, and I'll tell you what, two things. One, it wasn't that long ago that nobody ever would have thought about having one proactive person doing social media. You know, and so we've kind of managed to get past that. Now we've got social media teams and content marketing teams and all these other things. So some of it's just evolution, and I hope that Hug Your Haters becomes kind of the tip of the spear for postmodern customer service, the way that utility was kind of the tip of the spear for helpful content marketing. But here's an interesting story about KLM. So it wasn't as if they had like this master plan, like, we're going to dominate the world in social media customer service, and it's going to create all this revenue for us, and we're going to shift our culture to embrace being human in social media. Like, that was not the plan. Right? That was here's what happened. So remember the volcano a few years ago in Iceland? And there's, like, I can't pronounce the name of the volcano for sure, but it was this crazy volcano, and it had this enormous ash cloud, so it grounded all flights in Europe, right, for like 10 days, no flights. KLM is the Royal Dutch Airlines, right, so they're based in the Netherlands. Their home airport is in Amsterdam. Well, Amsterdam is not that big of a place, and the Netherlands is only, I think, 16 million people total as a country, so it's quite small. So their whole business is getting people from here to there through Amsterdam, right? So their in-country market is nothing. So nobody could fly. Like, none of their passengers could fly. They went from however many flights a day to 0 flights a day. So, of course, people are freaking out. They're like, oh, my God, I'm supposed to go to my wedding. I got to go to a funeral. I got to this business meeting. Like, nobody can fly. So they had, as you might suspect, this enormous spike of contacts, both phone, email, social media. And so they had a vice president at the time who just said, well, I don't know what else we're going to do. We're not flying, so why don't we just answer every one of these questions, because I don't know how we can not answer all these questions. So they just took pilots and flight attendants and mechanics, because they weren't flying, and gave everybody a laptop on card tables wherever they happened to work, and just said, open the laptop and start answering questions. And they just started answering every question. And then they said, well, the volcano's over. Now we're back up and running, but it's not like we can just stop. We can't be like, well, we answered all your questions, but now that we're flying again, we no longer answer every question. You can't do that. It's not like it's like volcano special questions answered this week. So that was the genesis, right? So a volcano is what got them to be the best in the world at social media customer service. It wasn't an awakening, it was an explosion.
Wow. Yeah, and I wonder how many explosions it takes for companies to have before it gets to that level. That's a really great point. Really great point. So,
and you were talking about, let me just jump in real quick. You were talking about, companies embracing this. The reason it doesn't happen, and the reason it hasn't happened so far, is that Brian, you work with a lot of big companies just the way we do. Customer service has always been marginalized, right? It's a cost, right? It's viewed as a cost and somehow lesser than sales and lesser than marketing. And what I want to do with this book is put customer service where it should be, which is on equal footing, if not even more important than sales and marketing, because you're talking about people who have already given you money. All you've got to do is prevent them from leaving. And the easiest way to do that is to just answer every complaint, every channel, every time.
Right. Well, and just before I turn this over to Suzie, I'll leave it with this one kind of comment / question. It's the every channel that is going to be, I think, and please confirm this, I think it'll be the most challenging, because a channel isn't just online. A channel, it happens in a moment. It happens like you said, it happens offline and online, and how you put the processes, the procedures, and the people and the technology in place to be able to capture all of that and be able to respond in any given moment and have your company of 1 to 100,000 to 1 million, however many employees, build something that is enabling you to do what you're saying, this cry for you need to answer every single person. That's not a small ask.
No, and it's really challenging because the channels keep proliferating. I talk in the book about, should you be doing customer service in Snapchat? Maybe, but should you be doing customer service in WhatsApp? Yeah, for sure. And many companies are starting to do that. I have a whole section in the book about WhatsApp and other new channels where if you're serious about this, if you're serious about raising the flag for Hug Your Haters, you're going to have to be there too. But again, does that require time and resources? Yes. But do those time and resources pencil out? Yes.
Couldn't agree more, man. So I'm gonna turn this over to Suzie, who's got some questions from the crowd.
Go, Suzie.
You are at 5 humans, just so you know.
And I got 22 minutes left. I'm like coasting.
Gonna say.
So Suzie, you're up.
All right. So first off, H2H community, thanks so much for bearing with us with our technical difficulties. Please tweet in your questions for me to ask away. Second of all, coming off the stream, Jay, we did a shout out to Dan Gingiss, who's over at Discover, who is implementing that stuff, and both Discover and then Dan answered, I'd say, within about 10 minutes of tweeting them, and that's the Discover brand handle itself. I'm super, super impressed. And then the other thing is we have a very cool hashtag that Timothy Moran, shout out to one of our BFFs there. He says, I think we've just uncovered a new idea on H2H chat. What's your hashtag volcano moment? I love it.
I just saw it. I just saw it on the other monitor. Yeah, I'm totally into that. I might have to steal that in my future keynotes for this concept. I'll credit you up. Yeah, might have to be volcano moment. I might have to get shirts made. I love it.
There you go. Right? What's your volcano moment? Pull in
HLM
and be like, dude, hey you guys. All right. So actually, I have a few questions to kind of get the ball rolling.
I will do my best.
All right, let's do it. Work in the term human as much as you can. So you mentioned actually right at the Brian's last question, you mentioned WhatsApp. I wanted, and just kind of tools in general. So when we're dealing with a brand that is trying to begin to adopt this, how do they go about choosing which platforms they should be jumping into?
Yeah, great question. We have a new consulting service at Convince to Convert based on this premise called the Honesty Audit. And so the Honesty Audit takes a look at all the places where people are reaching out to you today. So we look at phone, we look at email, we look at social, we look at discussion boards, forums, newfangled stuff like WhatsApp, and we categorize a cross section of those contacts by sort of severity of issue, tone of issue, customer expectations of response and speed based on the Hug Your Haters research. And we put together sort of a pie chart, right, as well as a flow chart that says, okay, the first priority is this, second priority is this, third priority is this, and sort of give you a priority flow chart as well as a overall time spent pie chart to help people understand, yeah, there might be 2 people a month that want to reach out to you at WhatsApp, so maybe that's not a priority today, but you know that balance is not static, right? I mean, to think about doing customer service on Instagram, for example, would have been crazy a year ago, and now people do it all the time.
Right, right. I love that. Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of social listening. I tell everyone you got to begin with social listening as your strategic foundation. I don't care what you're doing, but you need to find out where you are.
Yeah, and one of the things I talked about in the book, and I talked about a lot in just in general because I'm really a big fan of their software, is the guys at Geophedia who do social listening that is geographically based, and it's for when people have an issue about your business, but they don't use your name, right? So they're not tagging you.
Right.
And so it surfaces all of the content created, for example, at the Mall of America. So here's all the, you just dial it in, so here's all the tweets, all the Facebook posts, all the Instagram posts that are happening at the Mall of America, so they can use that in a customer service context or even a public safety context, actually. So if somebody says something, even if they don't tag Mall of America, as long as they have geolocation turned on, you can see it. And that's the kind of aggressive listening that I think we need to move to. A lot of people are good at passive social listening, like, did they mention us, answer back. What we got to get to is aggressive social listening, which is predictive listening and geospatial listening that pulls opportunities out of the ether if it's not explicitly directed to you.
I love that. I remember, I forget when I heard about this, but obviously, you know, Richard Branson is always just a trendsetter. And I think it was, it might have been at Heathrow that someone happened to tweet early on, right, that, you know, they had to stay overnight because their flight was delayed. And they had a Virgin employee come out with a pillow and like a water bottle, like within, you know, it was probably in a keynote that I heard that. And I was just completely struck, you know, because that's so, and it was listening. You know, it was, they found out, you know, you're at Heathrow, and there you are. I absolutely love that. Okay, so we have some great stuff coming in here. One from one of our H2H chatters, J.S. Gilbert. Shout out to him. He always has the best questions. He says, it seems that lots of people are using social media to blackmail businesses. Often complaints have no merit. What to do? And I think you covered this a little bit when you were talking about trolls, but that was when we were having some tech issues, and I'd love to have you revisit that.
Yeah, actually, there's a section that I'm working on in the book about that. There's a chapter called "Why People Don't Hug Their Haters," and I go through the 5 main reasons why businesses don't do it. One is volume, just too many complaints. Bryan touched on that. Second is channel proliferation. There's too many channels. Talked about that. One is cultural, right? It's just not what we do. We don't care that much about customers really to spend this kind of resources. And one is taking it personal, right? Which is especially true for small businesses. They're like, hey, you're saying that my baby is ugly and I can't deal with that, so I'm just going to go into my turtle shell and pretend this didn't happen. But the fourth one is feeling like you're being blackmailed, right? Is feeling like, you know, the complaints are inappropriate and somebody's just trying to scam you, right? By saying, hey, there was a fly in my soup, well, how come my dinner's not free? And does that happen? It totally happens. It totally happens all the time. But here's the way I look at it, Suzie. And folks out there, and there's several people I interviewed for the book who sort of echo these comments. Are you, in some cases, going to have to give away a couple of gift cards here or there that people don't actually deserve? Yeah, probably. And I wish that wasn't the way the world worked. I wish there weren't people out there like that, but there are. But But what is the true cost? The true cost of giving away a few extra thises or a few extra that's, balanced by the cost to your brand by not engaging, by not answering, by not being on the record in a public forum of hugging your haters. Let's say it's going to cost you an extra $500 a month in gift cards that were bogus, versus saying, you know what, I'm going to try and pick and choose who's appropriate, who's worthy.
Right.
It's just not. It's the actual expense is negligible, where it's expensive is psychological, and people got to get over that.
Yeah. I absolutely, completely agree. I think that's such a big issue. And actually, so then we have a perfect follow-up from Cheval, who says, how do you respond to people who are constantly spamming you without being rude to them? And I think in that case, right, you have the one case where there are people who are using social media to blackmail you once. What happens if they're doing it 10 times, right?
Yeah, and that's
how do you handle that?
It's really important wherever possible to kind of keep a database, whether you're using a social media tool or any number of offline customer service software packages, and trying to meld those together is the best possible scenario. It's not really there yet, even for big companies. But this idea of making sure you document, hey, we've already interacted with this person a bunch of times in a bunch of different formats, and that's where you sort of get into that rule of three, right? It's like, look, man, asked and answered. Like, we've already addressed you, and when I say answer every complaint in every channel every time, I mean that. But if somebody, you've already answered them and now they're asking again, well, then all bets are off. Then that person can be ignored.
How do you...
Sorry, hold on one quick sec. I got to jump in. I want to ask just a real quick question before we move into more of the crowd questions. Jay, a lot of the stuff that you're talking about here has to do with companies. How about people? What about people brands and customer service on what you do, especially you, the Jay Baer brand? How do you manage is it the same? And because it's harder to scale as an individual than it is with resources. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that it's exactly the same. And while I'm sure I miss complaints here or there, I would advise individuals, sole proprietorships, personal brands to do the exact same thing, to answer every complaint in every channel every time. I did a great interview with Gary Vaynerchuk for the book, and of course he's a controversial figure. He gets a lot of people hating on him, quote unquote, in social media. And he said, the people I pay most attention to are the haters for two reasons. One, they usually are right? There's usually a kernel of truth in every hate, and he's exactly right about that. And two, they at least are taking their time to let me know. He said the people that are really scary are the invisible crowd that are just like, I'm out on that guy, and he's absolutely right. Every time that somebody chooses to complain, they are giving you a gift of insight and a gift of time. Let me tell you a quick story. There's an example in the book from Le Pain Quotidien, which is a bakery chain, bakery and cafes. There's about 200 of them across the world. They're based in Brussels. And LPQ has this amazing program. Erin Pepper is their global director of customer experience, and she does this thing where, and I love this idea. People at home steal this idea. So when somebody leaves a negative review on Yelp for them, what she does is she PMs them, private messages them, and says, hey, by the way, I really appreciate that. We're going to go to great lengths to address your problems. But you know what? You're a really discerning customer. Like, you notice things that other people don't notice. You're really sharp. And so what I'd like you to do, with your permission, I'd like to give you 2 gift cards a month. And what I'd like you to do is twice a month, go to a different LPQ location, have lunch on me, and then please fill out this quick survey and tell us what you thought, and help us try and find things that are wrong with our business, because you are much smarter about this than most customers that walk through our door. So they're taking haters and turning them into a free, almost free, secret shopper army. That's smart business. That's smart business.
I love it.
Yeah, seriously. That is a steal this idea.
And I've done that. I've done the same thing. I've done the same thing where people have said, "Hey, this blog post sucks." I'm like, "Wow, you know what? Maybe that wasn't my blog post. We would love for you to write guest blog posts on Convince and Convert." Flip the script, baby.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. Sorry, Bryan.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So I love that. I'm just like now going through my mind going, ooh, social strategy, this is awesome. So, all right, we have a great question from Ross, who's also one of our H2H chat BFFs. He says, what's it going to take before companies put resources and focus on customer service instead of it being an afterthought? He also asked a follow-up that I think kind of plays, it's a little bit of a shift from it, but I still like it. Or I like it as well. He says, what's it going to take kind of for companies to focus on the customers they have rather than the new customers they're trying to get? So I think that balance. So basically, where do we get that balance here?
I don't know. It's beyond my pay grade. Here's what I hope happens. Okay. Well. Here's what I think the problem is, okay? You know who really believes in the power of customer service? People who work in customer service, and at some level operations managers and COOs. But that's not a sexy thing, right? The people who get all the credit and the budget and the conferences and the books are, as I mentioned before, marketing and sales, right? I can look over here and look at a shelf of like 500 social media books. You know how many customer service books there are? A lot, but not nearly as many. Yep. There's also almost no relevant customer service books because they're not talking about today's reality, which is why I'm writing Hug Your Haters. So to some degree, I think it takes books like Hug Your Haters and concepts like this to elevate customer service out of the customer service department and into the larger business conversation. So I'm not suggesting that one book by me can carry that water, but I think that's what it's gonna take, right? Is people thinking about customer service and sort of its friend customer experience as the real driver of business success. And you start to see research to that end, like there's amazing research from Walker that came out recently, which says that by 2020, which like that's 5 years, kids, by 2020, customer experience will be more important than price in how B2B makes buying decisions. So more and more of that kind of research is going to start to change the views of the C-suite in bigger companies and get them to start understanding this. For smaller companies, I'm not sure. A lot of times, ironically, it's harder to change their minds because they're just like running in place as fast as they can.
Yeah. So that's what I was gonna ask, kind of as a follow-up. What are your thoughts in terms of a small business trying to handle this? You know, they can't necessarily, in a lot of ways, they don't even have a customer service thing, right? It's you know, it's this person who's also doing X, Y, Z. If you were going to talk to someone and say, okay, this is like the first step you could do.
Yeah, it depends on how small. It depends on how small is. But a lot of the great case studies in the book are small businesses where the owner is actually doing all the customer service, right? Is doing the Hug Your Haters stuff. You know, even people who there's a great example from Fresh Brothers Pizza. And Fresh Brothers is a chain of 14 pizza places in California. And Debbie, who's their owner, she handles all of them. She handles all the complaints. She does all the Yelp reviews. She does everything on her own because that way she actually knows like what's real, what's weird. She can filter it out to each store manager. It's just easier for her to do it, and she spends a fair amount of her time doing that. Now, that doesn't work for all small businesses, but I think the smaller the business, and this is going to sound weird, that you have to kind of make one person in charge. Because when you start having a lot of handoffs in small business, things get dropped. In big business, you can create process and structure and software and things like that to make sure it doesn't get dropped. But in small business, you kind of have to have the person who knows where all the skeletons are buried. And so sometimes that just requires making that somebody's job.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I'm the daughter of a small business owner, and it's an intense situation, but you know, it's always hard, right? Because on the one hand, you can increase your sales like crazy, take your business to the next level. On the other hand, it's that time, right? And you have to try and convince yourself that the customer service can be worth putting taking away a little bit of time for that, from that sales pitching.
It's that old concept, right? If you're putting water in a leaky bucket, what are you really accomplishing?
Yep. It's the perennial issue. So we have, I want to ask one last question, and this is coming from Jay Perkins, and I think it's so important. So brands will often, I'm paraphrasing it, Jay, brands will often kind of do the things where they say, okay, thank you for responding on Twitter, DM us your specific information. Yeah. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, if you actually need somebody's account number or something that they really don't want shared publicly, I think you kind of have to do that. And obviously Twitter's making some changes where you don't have to follow back in order to DM, which I think is really, really smart and is going to make it a little more viable as a customer service channel than it already is. So I'm okay with it. It's well, let me put it this way. I'm much more enthusiastic about somebody reaching out on Twitter and then you trying to close the loop on Twitter than I am somebody reaching out on Twitter and you saying, please email us or please call us. So whatever possible, you should try and maintain channel consistency, because if you then say, well, thanks for reaching out, but now we need you to go over here, that's just making the human do what you want them to do as a company, right? And that's the fundamental challenge, right? I mean, most customer service departments are set up to be at the company's convenience, not at the customer's convenience.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I think it's always a balance, right? You're trying to keep. I absolutely agree. So, okay, last question, and this is coming from me. So what is the first step if a company wants to begin to implement Hug Your Haters? What's the first step that they should take? Is this investing in a platform, designating an individual? How does that work?
No, I think the first step is kind of what I was saying before with the honesty audit. The first step is to understand what your current scenario is. So what's your complaint volume? What's your complaint tonality? What are your customer expectations? And what are the channels that you have enough volume that you actually need to cover? Because until you understand sort of what the dynamics of your hater scenario is, you can't make an intelligent software decision. You can't make an intelligent staffing decision. You can't align resources. You have to understand what's really happening in its entirety. And that means both online and offline. And that's where it usually gets messed up, because people start thinking, hey, let's look at what the current scenario is. And they look at social because they're on the social team. Well, yeah, but you're not looking at phone calls and emails, which is actually much higher by volume. So if you're not looking at that, you're investigating 20% of the overall customer inquiries. Well, who cares?
Yeah. I love that. I love the online and the offline. I think that makes so much sense, and it's so hard, right, to convince people to lay that foundation first, because it is the idea of I have to patch the situation, I have to fix all this XYZ. This is great. All right, Bryan, I am out of questions, or just I'm kind of like stunned, not out of questions, but more just like, whoa, information overload. How often does that happen? Like never. So
especially good.
Right, I was going to say, it doesn't happen to me, ever.
Well, I'm glad. This is the first time I've done a chat about the book. I'm super excited about it. Great questions. And the book won't be out till early next year, but as I said, I'm writing it now. But people can go to hugyourhaters.com. I have a sort of a tragedy of a website up there right now. But you can order books. You can pre-order books now. And if you order pre-order books, I'll actually put your name in the book. And everybody gets a copy of a free poster called The Hatrix, which is how people hate and where and why and what different channels look like. So what do people expect if they complain on Facebook versus the phone, that kind of thing. So you can get a free version of the Hatrix and books and your name in the book and all kinds of other special bonuses if you go to hugyourhaters.com.
Awesome.
Fantastic. You just answered my next question. That was good. So
thank you.
Now I see you met my question before I got to hate on you. No, I'm kidding. You're just serving me up before I get a chance. So, hey, Jay, really appreciate it. I know you got a chat next with Bryan Fanzo, so shout out to Social Hangout and Rachel Miller. You guys are on next, and you guys can do that at
SBiz Hour.
Espezower. Thank you. Sorry.
Yes.
Wrong one.
The other one's right before us. Monday is a crazy chat.
So many chats. So, hey, Jay, thank you so much for
thank you, my friend.
all the people here. Suzie, appreciate it. Jay, just so you know, you've got one more human to slip in. And then I wanted to also thank everybody for especially our sponsors. Just a quick shout out to the Shareology partners / sponsors: Newstar, MasterCard, Cisco, IBM, Hootsuite, Freshdesk, Speakeasy, Influitive, Mutual Mind, Little Bird, and Cox Communications. Really appreciate all of you guys for helping to support this chat. Is there any final words that anybody wants to say before we go?
Human.
And if everyone doesn't mind now tweeting that Jay Baer broke Joel Comm's at Joel Comm
Broke his record
of saying the word human on hashtag HHChat, that would be very appreciative.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for coming again today. We will see you next Monday at noon Pacific Standard Time, 3 o'clock Eastern Time. Appreciate it, and we'll see you all soon. Cheers.
Suck it, Joel Comm. Suck it, Joel Comm.
Bam. Mic
Thanks,
drop.
guys.
All right.
Bye.